Welcome to Interval Drinks
with your tipsy thespian pals, Chris
and SLP.
Before the parade passes by. Wrong show, but we are talking about parade.
Parade!
And of course, we have an appropriate themed cocktail.
We do.
What are we calling this one, SLP?
Well, it was really hard to try and find a good name for this one, but we've got Feel the Purple Rain.
Feel the Purple.
Thank you,
gosh,
barman.
this looks dangerous.
I know. It's hard to come up with a cocktail name for a show as serious as this, I feel.
Oh,
Cheers,
gosh.
cheers. It's a nice... Oh, sorry. Oh, God, that's wrong.
That is wrong.
Oh, it's like blueberry...
I don't think I can...
Yes, you can. Shut up.
Before we start getting to grips with this one,
Yeah.
I already know how excited you're going to be about this SLP. Again, Parade for me is another example of the US versus UK musical theatre.
Yes.
Sweeping up at the 1998 Tony's Awards and Drama Desk Awards.
Yeah.
And with themes that are incredibly difficult to digest.
It is. I think this is the heaviest show that we've covered yet,
Yes.
isn't it? I think it probably is, thematically.
But with a huge plot twist.
Yes.
Of course. No spoilers here. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend listening to the album because some of the songs, and you're not going to like this because this is a Jason Robert Brown musical, but some of the songs are quite forgettable.
Yeah.
Although some of them are absolutely brilliant.
They are. But I feel that so Jason wrote this when he was like 24 or 25, which I think is astonishing and really annoying. And he was fresh off the back of just doing Songs for a New World with Daisy Prince. And then he was asked to join this little old project with Hal Prince. Daisy sort of popped him in because Stephen Sondheim was originally asked to do the music for this.
So I've got Easter egg fact.
Yeah,
and I really didn't want you to say that because
I'm so sorry.
I thought that would be a bit of a surprise for you, but you knew it anyway.
Tell me anyway. No,
but
I'm
of course
surprised.
you do.
Go on.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, go on.
Did you know that Stephen Sondheim was originally asked to pen the score, but he turned it down?
Shut the front door!
I know.
What?
She's off.
What?
Yes, I know.
Was that a good enough reaction for you?
Perhaps after the success of Assassins, maybe.
Oh yeah.
But I'm so glad it was offered to the more than capable Jason Robert Brown.
And so, returning to your point of forgettable versus not forgettable and things like that, and yes, there are some absolutely iconic songs in this, and there are some that I feel aren't written to be memorable or like and well, you know how one of our common segments in this is I would sort of say, what's your karaoke go-to, as we're in Vox Box and stuff like that. This isn't that kind of show.
No, it isn't.
It?
And so, considering what the themes are like, the score itself is pretty laid back, don't you think?
Oh, that's it. Why do you say that?
I don't know. I just think, considering his more other works, this one's a little bit more chill.
Interesting.
I think.
Interesting.
Apart from Big News, of course, which would be my go-to karaoke song.
Yes. Well, fair enough. Or Pretty Music. Yeah, okay. That's really interesting because I really feel that Jason has written this from I can't think of the right word, Chris. Like, it's entirely about the story for this, and he does some really, really damn clever things in this, like music-wise, where he uses all these things like it feels like an experiment when you're listening to it. It feels like you can tell that he's a youngish composer and he's really trying out all these sort of things, not in a like immature way or anything like that.
But it's quite stylized.
It is quite stylized, and it's more that you can just tell he's like, I'm gonna use a bit of this and a bit of that. So there's this thing in musical bitonality, where you've got two keys going on at the same time. So if you don't know what that means, it means that there's like da da dee and then da 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 kind of thing, just completely different notes that they might sort of fit together sometimes, but
that
they kind
shouldn't
of
sound right, but they do.
Exactly. And they're shoved together to create some very deliberate dissonance and clashes and stuff like that. And this is like littered throughout so many of the things. And so I think that's then one of the reasons why some of the songs feel like they're not like just sing-alongable kind of thing, or even just, it's not the tunes that you would have when you're just walking along and things like that.
And you're not going to come out of the theatre humming the songs
that
per
one
se,
necessarily, because it's more almost like it's a more characterful thing that he's doing. It's more that he's literally creating that dissonance
with the story at its heart, at its very core.
It's to sort of show a musical perspective of how clashing all the judgment is and everyone's opinions and stuff like that, and that they're all talking over one another, but they're not listening to each other, they're not blending musically, they're clashing. I love this show so much.
I can just, you're oozing the passion. I love it. I came across this quote from the website from the most recent Broadway revival, which is happening now.
Happening right now,
Ben Platt.
Ben Platt and is she called Michaela Diamond?
Yes.
I think. Yes,
yes,
and she's an up and coming name. She's going to be.
She's going to be something. Yeah. But dare I say it, this little quote from the theatre's website really made me laugh. And I know it shouldn't.
Oh,
it's quite naughty.
What about Parade made you laugh?
This production contains theatrical haze, flashing lights, scenes of graphic violence, racism and anti-Semitism, and white supremacy. This production is not suitable for children under 4. Oh, right. Okay, but 5-year-olds, fine. But if you want to bring your 5-year-olds...
That's really... Okay. That's a choice.
But going back to that kind of US-UK differences in sort of musical theatre opinion, there's been a number of Broadway revivals of this show from its humble beginnings in 1998. My favourite album, though, is the Donmar Warehouse production. I don't know if you've listened to that. I don't know whether that's 2007.
Only a little bit,
although I've yet to listen to the new Ben Platt
with Ben Platt,
I need to give that a go, really. And I'll keep you all posted, of course, on how that will be... and that would do. I love how bluesy the score is. I know I said it was a bit laid back, but when we talk about how pertinent the themes are, it kind of matches the themes of the book that we were talking about much earlier.
Yes.
And blues is definitely the way to go, I think.
It is, but I like that they've almost... He's doing a lot of thematic stuff, hasn't he, throughout, and the blues is then always like, what's he called, the Jim Conley. He's got feel the rain fall. Then so he's got this angle, but then we've got the sort of the sonorous, like beautiful strings of the mourning mother of the little girl. We can't sort of not have spoilers in this.
I know, you can't really talk about it.
Oh, spoiler alert! There's going to be
the plot
spoilers
twist, which we.
Well, I mean, it happens quite near the beginning. There's a little girl dies.
Yes.
Kind of thing. We have to sort of be able to say this. Mary Fagan, and so there's all the like really beautiful strings that's always accompanies when mother's on and stuff like that. There's obviously then the military and the drums all the way through, and it's just, and he gets all these things that shouldn't go together, but they kind of do. They kind of do. And it's just, I get that. I get kind of Scottsboro Boys vibes from the score as well.
What, sorry? The Scottsboro Boys.
What's that?
Oh, wow.
What's that?
Oh, wow. Oh, no, you need to listen to Scottsboro Boys.
What's that, or who's that?
It's a musical.
Okay.
It's sensational.
Oh, right.
The score's fantastic. You need to listen to it.
Okay.
It's so good. It's so good.
Who's it about?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't know whether it's... I need to... Yeah, it's great though. It's a really good show.
And is it because it uses all these different
Yes, but
things?
It's very similar in style as well.
Really?
This sort of white supremic, is that a word?
It is now.
I've just created a new word. You see, this is what I mean about interval drinks. Not only are we au fait with musical theatre, but we also create brand new words.
Yes.
And that's going to be in the Oxford English Dictionary as of now. Okay. Supremic.
Supremic. So this show is based on a true
story.
True story.
Real event.
Real trial, 1913.
Yeah.
Rather sensationalised by the press and by the media at the time, and that. Oh, this is. I remember when I was writing my notes for this one, I was kind of like, there's so much to talk about, but also it feels like a different show for us to be talking about on this, because normally it's quite jokey and stuff like that. Yeah. It's not normally just fact.
Sometimes kind of you have to bring it down.
Sometimes you have to bring it down, baby. But yeah, and I think the fact that this is a true story as well makes it kind of all the more poignant to get it right and stuff like that. And it's like, what angle are you playing it? And one of my favourite songs in this is, it's not called a mashup one, but it's one where it starts as one and it goes into another song. The Factory Girls going into Come Up to My Office, right? Yeah.
Right, okay, and I see where this is going.
Because a big chunk of the show is obviously this guy, Leo Frank, his trial, because he's accused of raping and murdering this young girl in his employ, right? Yeah. And he's, it's set during the Civil War, isn't it? Yes.
Yes, it is.
And he's come down from the north, and he's Jewish, and he's new in town, and he's also become straightaway, he's like the boss of this, I think it's a pencil company, I think, yeah. And so he's kind of all these reasons for the locals to kind of not really trust him and things like that, or at least in their minds. And so as soon as this obviously really unfortunate thing happens, they're all like, fingers just point straight away. And so a big bit of the show is the trial, right? And you've got these factory girls who you later find out have been kind of told, exaggerate it a little bit and stuff like that. But they do this stunning, he calls my name, he'll touch my hair, something like that. I can't remember the exact words, but they're all sort of sitting there, and it starts with one girl, and then they all kind of are all saying the same thing, and the audience hears, and you sort of hear it in the soundtrack that they all start singing on top of one another, but of course it's one after the other. They're all absolutely shunning him down and saying he does all the creepy things, and he sort of walks behind me and sort of sniffs and smiles, and awful damning stuff.
I think it's good to point out though here that he didn't do it.
Well, exactly, and you do find out in their reprise much later on in the show that they admit to exaggerating and stuff like that. But then, and also he's the most gentle character
he's
as
gorgeous,
well, isn't he?
It's
so
almost
sweet.
like To Kill a Mockingbird vibes.
Yes, it is. He's like really, really sweet, and all he's doing is he's focusing on his own shit and stuff like that. But then in this song, say, and he looks, and he something, and he smiles, and then it just turns into this like why don't you come up to my office, got biscuits for two kind of thing, and he's suddenly, so it's then him singing, but of course it's how the jury and how the people in the room are then sort of seeing him or thinking about him, or even if it's just them, they're sort of continuing how they're portraying him, and suddenly he's singing at this like sleazy guy, and he's just like, come on to my office, I've got fried chicken and biscuits for two, come on in, and he's just, and then it goes a little bit sexual, and they, it gets really, really like oily as this portrayal of this guy, and of course all we're seeing there is a certain angle, and it's so clever. It's so clever. And then like later on in the trial, you actually get to hear him genuinely on the stand, and he's got the most heartbreaking song. It's hard to speak my heart, and it's just, and he's being so simple. He's not crying and screaming and pleading. He's just like,
strip back, laid bare.
Exactly. It's really raw, and it's just I love that.
And I love also how you're taking the lead on this, like you did with no, absolutely. Last 5 years, my notes have run out, and I'm just sat here listening to. But I do have a fascinating fact for you.
Go.
Did you know that Sondheim was originally asked to pen the score, but he turned it down?
What?
Yes.
What? I genuinely love that fact, though. I do love it, and also I like that there must have at some point been a conversation between Hal Prince and his daughter Daisy, going like, who am I going to do?
What are we going to do now?
Why don't I introduce you to this little man I know called Jason Robert Brown? And it's just been boom.
But again, it would have been a completely different show had Sondheim written it, because they are so different in style.
Yeah. Well, that's actually really interesting. I've never kind of really done that before, Chris, of sort of gone, let's take this musical and imagine what it would be like if somebody else wrote it. That sounds... Wow. I can't actually even think where it would go.
Where you would go with it.
I'm sure that it would similarly be genius.
Yes, and incredibly wordy.
And incredibly wordy. But I don't know whether... I'm glad... Yeah, I can't picture a better one, should I say.
What it would sort of head them both.
Yeah.
And we get to pick which one was our favourite.
Oh, God. Well, if only we could ring him up and just say, do you mind just...
Can you do it now? From beyond the grave. Oh, no, he's calling me. Oh. No, I prefer Jason Robert Brown.
You got the job, kid. He's now what, like 50 something? I don't know. Oh, crikey. In fact, I'm just going to bring this over here. I never do this. I've got so many notes on this. I was just like, I think one of the sort of saddest things about the story as well. So, in fact, you know, you were saying about the current Broadway with Ben Platt and things like that, and in some interviews he was saying that he, and both he and his co-star are Jewish as well anyway, but they didn't know about this story until they literally heard Parade.
Oh wow,
growing
okay.
up kind of thing.
Right.
And I think that's really powerful because as a composer, as a director, your job isn't to be a historian.
Yeah.
Is it?
But it also shows how times have changed, doesn't it?
It does, and just like, gosh, can you imagine having that pressure of being like, this is such an important story and we want to tell it right, but also, I mean, you wouldn't have any idea at the time, but this is going to be the way that I didn't know about the case before I heard Parade. And also, did you know that he was posthumously pardoned? So way after he was after he died, he's since been pardoned.
Wow,
yeah,
that's great.
And they believe that it's another key person who is featured in the show who acts as like a key witness against him, and it's just like it's
gets you there.
It really does. It really does. I've got some nerdy things for you.
Oh, we love a nerdy thing
about the score.
Right.
That's
okay.
right. Because
no, please waffle on. I'm enjoying listening to you.
I mean, nerdy.
I don't know whether they are at home, but
right. Have you heard of a classical composer called Ravel?
Ravel, yes.
Ravel has written this very famous piece called Bolero.
You have?
Right, yeah. And it has
it's the Torvald Dean.
Yes, yeah, of
dance.
course. And it's got that sort of, it's like the most famous thing about it, or one of them, is that it's got this repetitive snare drum all the way through, as does this show. The military drums of war are there. It's the first thing that you hear, and it's like dun, 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 and it's like really, really faint, and then suddenly like you just got this massive chime and stuff like that, and the drums appear all the way through, and it finishes the show as well, and it's just this like, I love that sort of idea of, is it that the war, even though it's not the civil war at this point, just the war between these people, is that just always going to happen?
Yeah.
Is that sort of that choice? And
it's sort of the imagery as well that portrays, because you associate the drums with kind of like a war cry almost.
Exactly.
Like a it's a military sound, isn't it?
It is, and it's obviously it's sort of showing like rigidity and this is the way that it's, you know, everything military to me is always, it feels very
regiment.
Yeah, exactly. And like, this is what we do. Proper. This is who we are.
Yeah.
You're not who we are. That kind of thing. You could go with that angle. But I just think it's so good. And it's really repetitive. It's very persistent, and it crescendos and crescendos, grows to this massive, like we said, the big chime. Right? Chimes. Researchers that I've been nerding on about. I've been looking at like PhD essays. I freaking love this show so much. But someone has gone through and like found every point where there's a big chime kind of thing, dong, bonk, and no, not in this one. But they're always at points where there's like they're trying to evoke like guilt or like sorrow or something like a really extreme
moment.
thing. Yeah. And so it's like, I don't want to say about the twist, but like all these points all the way through, and when you sort of hear them, you're like, oh shit, all the way through, so good. Wow. And it's like, when he's effectively in speech marks march to the gallows, shall we say, which you have to watch the show. Yeah. Spoiler. Right at the beginning in the prologue, so it has the whole got the thing, and then the chimes and stuff, and then we have this repetitive like yada da da dum, yada da da dum, bum bum bum. What's that theme? All the wasted time.
Oh, wow.
All the million hours. So it's got all the way through. I know. I'm having a great time.
I did say at the beginning of this podcast, I was like, this is your baby. You're going to run with it. And I'm just like, honestly, if you're listening to this on Spotify or however you listen to your
sick
podcast,
of my voice by now.
You need to be watching the YouTube video because I'm just like, my chin is to the floor and you're just like giving it. And I'm
it's
just
so
like,
good. How clever is
it's
that?
Great.
Though?
It's really good.
This like.
I love how you unpick this.
I know, but I just love that's because I suppose right at the beginning. So we see his Leo's wife Lucille all the way through, don't we? And she properly like helps him out with the trial. She does as much she can sort of do there, and they start having recently moved to their new home. I think that's another thing that he's quite new to the town and stuff like that. I can't quite remember. But she feels a little bit unsettled, and you can kind of tell there's a sort of duet that they do, but they're actually not singing together. He's working, she's at home. And you can kind of sense from that there is this friction, and she's just like, I feel a bit stuck, I'm in a bit of dead end and things like that in this relationship, and she's not quite sure. And throughout the show, all these literal trials and tribulations, and they kind of fall in love with each other again. They really do, and they just get so because I think at first dismissive feels like a really strong word, but he's kind of like, you're just my wife, kind of thing. But then by the end, he's like properly relying on her.
I need you. Yeah,
exactly, because she's doing all this sort of, whilst he's in prison, awaiting a sentence, she's, doing all this like...
Keeping the home.
Exactly, keeping the home and just keeping the faith and stuff like that. And then they have that beautiful, they've got this duet, All the Wasted Time, right at the end. And it's just, it's stunning, stunning. And that, having that, yada-da-da-da, all the wasted time, right at the beginning. And it's kind of just little, it's going to come up, it's going to come up. I love it. I love it. There's some evangelical Christian stuff.
Yeah, it is, as well as being bluesy, it's very gospel-y.
It switches really strongly between all these different things, doesn't it? And there's a hymn that's kind of used. Is it? I think this might be at the funeral. It's at the funeral for Mary, for the little girl, which is quite near. I think it's like halfway through Act 1, and it's the. Oh yes! Oh, I forgot what the point was, but I've now got it, and it's really excited me. We should have a podcast.
Mate. We should start our own podcast.
But I mean, we're doing fun. We've got time. We've got.
Go for it.
But so we've got this hymn. And it's, right, so if this is the key, da da da, we've got, there is a fountain filled with blood, da 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 da, whatever the words are. But they're all singing in what's called homophony, where they're all singing different notes, but they're all moving together. Which is very hymn-like. Yeah. So that's kind of, and then we've still got the chimes coming through like that. And so it goes, da 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 da, bass with da 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 da, that's our key. But then it keeps on going, bum, and just having this really clashy note, bum, ba, ba, da, da, dee, da, dum, bum, and it's really unsettling that you've got this one note that keeps on coming back. That's like, guilt. This is wrong. This is sorrow, anger, whatever, and they're singing in this sort of key, and it's the one note that really does not fit at all.
Right.
It's so clever. Oh man.
This is just brilliant.
I'm having a great time.
And I'm having a great time listening to you. I think I need you on my own podcast, reading me a bedtime story.
What about like murder and trials?
Why not? You've got a dream of something, right?
Oh God. Oh, and so one last thing to say, because I will then shut up, I promise. But the thing, there are a couple of things that I really love. So of course, this is a Jewish couple. Right, and there is a featured Jewish prayer at the end of the show. I'm not going to give you the context why, because I want you to go and watch it and like listen to it and
do your research. Write me a PhD dissertation.
Yes, indeed.
I want to read the thesis.
And I will check it.
90,000 words.
And I've been speaking to a friend of mine who is a Sephardic Jew, and so she's advised me on some pronunciation. I do apologise if I butcher it. I'm not intending to. I'm trying to just do it as well as I can. But the Leo Frank recites the Shema, which is a genuine Jewish prayer, and I think it's the central like prayer of Judaism from my research and stuff. And he sings that like completely a cappella, and I love just a thing about Jewish prayer anyway. It's gorgeous, but also they are songs. Like if a group of Jewish people started singing it, everyone just know the tune. It's like a set melody, which I just think is beautiful. Whereas the Broadway group at the moment, before they've got a little ritual before nearly every show that they do. They recite a different Jewish prayer altogether called the Mourners. I think it's Kaddish or Kiddush, depending on your whether it's Yiddish or Hebrew. And it's like a prayer that you might say for the dying kind of thing, but it doesn't itself mention death. Oh, thank you. It doesn't mention like death or dying itself. It's more like a celebration of the greatness of God kind of thing. So they, as the Broadway group,
that's their
write that. They sort of, it's the last thing they do. They sort of have this silent moment, like all together. They've done all the stretches and the vocal warmths and stuff like that, and they just do this all together because it's such a poignant piece, isn't it?
I've loved listening and
I feel
talking.
like I've spoken a lot.
Please,
I'm so sorry.
I've loved it. They're going to love it at home, however they're listening to it. And another Jason Robert Brown musical for you to waffle on about. And I'm so thrilled that you did.
I haven't drunk anything.
I know.
Cheers. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for letting me waffle on.
God bless you. And shalom.
Cheers. Shalom.